Hello, school board. Welcome to the Communications and Engagement Workshop. Adam, myself, and Nikki Harkis will be presenting items to you tonight. So thinking about communications and how we do our work, we work within operating expectations 3 and 9. These inform our work. And so hopefully you'll see that throughout our presentation tonight, as well as the strategic plan itself. We sit in the middle pillar here and thinking about how we build relationships with our community. And so hopefully you'll see that work cascaded throughout our presentation to you. So the workshop structure is based on the feedback that you all gave as a part of a survey. And so we have 4 focus areas tonight. We're going to talk about the communications plan. We're going to talk about communicating with our community. We're going to talk about the school site communications playbook, and also what does success look like. So hopefully those will answer the questions that you all have. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam and we will get started.
All right, thanks, Patty. So we are talking about the communications plan. So the communications plan is really the guiding document for all strategic communications in the district. Patty and I, we work through that as one of our guiding stars. It's aligned with the district strategic plan and our operating expectations. It was developed with community feedback. So these are 8 goals for our department that we're trying to accomplish through the plan. Trust, engagement, excellence in school communication, strategic plan outcomes, marketing, return on investment, staff and district communication, equity, and unity. So the communications plan was created after we had an audit done by Joe Donovan from the Donovan Group as an external third-party consultant. We also had a communications committee of parents and caregivers, students, and staff. I know 2 of our board members were on that committee. The committee's work was also the basis for the creation of our 3-year plan. We took their feedback and used that to create the plan. And Patty and I, we check in on this monthly. We stoplight our progress in our internal document that we use to track with evidence and metrics. We also make additions and modifications as necessary when we acquire new learning or when we need to tweak the schedule a little bit to make sure that we are meeting our goals as to the best of our ability through the plan. And that's where how we adjust the timeline as necessary. And that's how we track our results to date. Evidence with metrics. You'll have a link to this in your board packet in a couple of weeks. Moving forward from our communication plan, we are getting ready. It's hard to believe we're coming to the end of our 3-year plan after next school year. So we are getting ready to create the 2025, 2026, and 2026, 2027 communications plan. That process will begin next year. In January of 2025, we will begin once again our communications audit, where we take a look at the work that we've been doing, how it's been measuring up, if it's meeting our community expectations. And then we'll start recruiting committee members again to have another communications committee. So then February and March of next year, we will begin the committee work where we meet with the committee and really take a deep dive into our communications efforts and what are the expectations that we need to be meeting from the committee's standpoint. Then using the next April and May, we will use the results of the audit, updated OEs if we have those from you at that time. We've heard that that's what a board focus area will be next year. We also use benchmark results, which Patty will talk about our benchmarking process in a little bit, and themes from the committee will help inform the creation of a new 2-year plan, which we will then roll out in the fall of 2025. Or in, guess right there it says July of 2025. So some areas of improvement that we looked at from this plan. So the 2022-2025 communications plan is the 3rd communications plan our district's undertaken. And it's the first time we've had a 3-year plan. We were really ambitious with all of our goals and wanted to stretch them over 3 years. We learned as we're going through this that things move fast enough in Sun Prairie that it's really hard to have a plan on the communications side for 3 years in advance. So for our 4th communications plan, we'll be moving back to a 2-year plan, as that's a more manageable time horizon for us. We also want to look to share the results with the communications committee, the board, the parent leadership collaborative, and the community of practice halfway through the plan, just so people are crystal clear about the progress we're making to meet expectations that were given to us and see our progress. I'll turn it over to Patty.
Thanks, Adam. So communicating with our community is the next area that we'll be talking about. And so there's a couple elements to this. And so I broke it down into a few different slides. So The first is thinking about engagement and how we build connections and relationships with the public. So here's a list. This isn't an all-inclusive list, but these are the ways that we are out in front of people or engage with people in our community. So they can see us at these fairs, they can talk to us, we can get their feedback, and we can engage with them. A lot of times those are just really fun. We're giving out buttons and little things and just being out in the community. So the next part is thinking about how we share info with our community. So our operating expectation 9 talks about how do we inform our community. Excuse me. So all of these things on this list, again, not an all exhaustive list, but these are strategic. We have them scheduled at certain times. The content is carefully mined for in a way that gives our community a lens into our strategic plan and also hopefully shows a return on investment. So those are things we are really strategic about when we're creating content for these items. So you can see all the ways we push information out and tell our stories. So that's another component. And then the component that I think you as school board members have shared the most amount of feedback about is how do we do two-way communication. And so the other two ways, one is out in front of people, engaging with them. The second is pushing information out to people. This is the third. Where do we bring people close to the work and ask for their feedback, or how do we get information and hear from our community and our public? So again, not an all exhaustive list, but just some ways that that we bring people towards and close to the work. And so I do have some items listed here. And then also, how did we get the feedback, or what was the method for that? So some of them say survey, some of them say direct feedback, thinking about Michael's community conversations out in the public where we can get some direct feedback. Same with coffee with the superintendent, where a few people come, the whole community is invited, and Brad's able to share a little bit of information with them, but then also provide room for their questions and their feedback. So thinking about this year, we have definitely shown a commitment to two-way communication. And some of the ways that I can think of that I continue to see is like the math, the reading, the music curriculum. Those each have had surveys this year where we've asked families for their feedback about that as we're making decisions. Also, we have play work groups and infinity groups that really help provide feedback and help shape the direction of some of this work. And so an example that you will see on Monday night before the board meeting is a 5-year pupil discrimination report, and that where we will be bringing that work to a space where the community can come and provide feedback about that. So I think this is something that our district has a ways to go, but we've also made some really good strides this year in showing a commitment to two-way communication and the value of that in our system. So another question that was elevated was how do we work with the media? And so thinking about how we communicate with them. And so Adam and I do create press releases that get sent to our local media, depending on what the subject is. A lot of the plays and events that we want to invite people to, we do press releases for, or if we have change in leadership. But we also do pitch them stories. And so we do reach out to the State Journal and on occasion and send them some stories or and ask them if they're interested. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not able to do that. But as a part of my rounding process with principals, I do ask them, I do remind them that in the playbook, it does talk about if they have events that they should invite us to. And so then Adam and I decide whether we should invite the press to it, or if it's just him and I going there and taking some photos and sharing a story. So we do every week when we check in, Adam and I check in, we do sort of mine for that sort of content. So also thinking about when we have a critical incident happening in our community, thinking about the media is a part of that, but only after we've sent information to our staff, information to our families, and then we share whatever information that we have shared with our families that's public facing. We do share that with our with our local media. So they do get folded into that process, but again, only after our staff and families are communicated with. Also, Adam and I have been working on building relationship with reporters, and also working on with some of our station managers that we have connections with that we can call and ask and talk to, and we do that. So we do collaborate with the media around athletic events. We're lucky we get a lot of coverage of our athletic events, and I know Eric does a great job working with the media around that. And then also annual features, like when graduation comes around, our Star does a really nice feature with a photo of every single graduate. And so just thinking about how we work with them, those are some of the ways. Hope that answers your question with that. So we do have some room to grow. As always, we want to continue to understand what our community needs. How do they want to be communicated with? We also need to do a better job showing the challenges that the district faces in addition to our celebrations. It is true over the last few years, we've been very focused on showing all the great things, but we do have challenges as a school district, and we want to make sure we look at sharing that. So we have some conversations coming up in the next few weeks about how we can do that better. And then also looking at classroom to caregiver communication. We know there's definitely room to grow with that, and we have some strategies for that. So looking at how we're going to move this forward, we are going to be elevating a public participation framework called IAP2. We will be elevating that to our directors this year in a better way, in a way to develop more public participation efforts, and how we can continue to move people closer to the work, and not just telling people about stuff, but how can they help us inform some of our practices. Also thinking about just ways we can continually look towards equitably communicating with our diverse audiences. Like, what do they need? What can we do? And that's something that we have made some strides in, but continue to work towards. Also, we're cascading in department scorecards a participation element into their work. So what does that look like? We've done this the last few years with practice profiles. And this year it's more like a rubric that we'll be elevating to all of them and training them a little bit about that. Also, we're talking about a community survey to ask communication preferences. So I don't know if we do a district-wide survey this summer, we would just fold in some communication questions to understand preferences. So we've done that about 5 years ago, and got some really good information. And I think it's a good time to do another survey to sort of check and get a pulse point of where our community lands. And then also thinking about how we leverage our family liaisons. We have some new people to our system. We have Jennifer Yang, who's working with our Hmong families. We have Danya Cannon, who is working with our Spanish-speaking families, and also Freddie, who will be, we have moved district level role, who's here at the district support center, who will be helping with translation of our materials at a quicker pace to make things more accessible. So we've got some great opportunities to work with our families and our family liaisons to continue to find out what people want and need from us. All right, so now we're going to turn it over to Nikki Harkis.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me share with you how Westside is currently using our communications playbook to increase communication with our families. The communications committee identified a goal to have better alignment of communication from site to site, which resulted in the creation of our school site communications playbook. The playbooks are a fixed strategy from the district scorecard that is then cascaded to our school scorecards. Our expectation is that each principal is familiar with the playbook and uses the communication playbook as a tool to help increase communication in the building, and as well as with families and caregivers. As a part of this, I'm able to round with Patty in the fall and spring to check in on communication strategies, how the use of the communications playbook is going, and how the overall communication is feeling in the building. In the first year, we really focused on school to home communication as part of our school site playbook. In year 2, we added the addition of classroom to home communication. So we'll really be focusing on that in the coming year. In my school site communication playbook, I use this as a tool to help guide how I'm communicating with stakeholders and also with families and caregivers. Um, Part of this is using our school perception survey data to really analyze how parents and caregivers are feeling about communication that's coming from the school. So, specifically, the question was asked last year of parents and caregivers: I am satisfied with the communication that comes from the school. In our 2022-23 data, our baseline in the fall was, I don't remember the exact baseline in the fall, but in the spring it was 90%. But last year I actually used that baseline fall data as a way to create a goal for Westside where we would increase communication going home from the classrooms. And my teachers really dug into sending home weekly or monthly updates of what was happening in their children's classrooms. We really honed in on making sure that our Facebook was always full of pictures of the great things going on at school, and that we were really working on getting timely communication to families. The data that came out that spring was a 90% satisfaction rate, which our goal this year was to maintain or go above that 90% satisfaction rate. And so, what we identified as a tool to do this was what's called the Remind app. So, Remind is a tool that my teachers use. It's an app that they download and then parents and caregivers download. And it enables us to send text messages back and forth, including pictures and all sorts of reminders. So, it's like a daily communication between classroom teachers and parents and caregivers. We really identified the tool to help with our attendance and getting kids to school, but it ended up to be just an all-around great tool for communication between classroom teachers and families. And just to share a little bit of success stories from the Remind app, in the fall, Miss Kazak, who was one of the teachers that really helped me to lead the implementation of Remind, herself, along with every teacher at Westside, sent out a notice to families saying, we're going to use Remind this year. Please sign up. And we sent out multiple communications to families, got almost everybody signed up. And then in collaboration with our school social worker and our site coordinator for community schools, we reached out individually to families that had not yet connected to Remind and got almost every family connected at Westside. In the winter, we really focused in on teachers sending out reminders to families when students were absent, just saying like, hey, we really missed your student, anything we can do to get them to school, anything that you need, as a way to really get kids in school and really hone in on our attendance data. A little story that a teacher shared with me. She had a student who was frequently absent. She sent a text message through Remind to the mom and said, we really miss Antonio. We hope that he comes back to school soon. And the mom texted back and said, Antonio has been feeling really anxious about school lately. And I showed him your message and he's really excited to come to school tomorrow. And his attendance improved from there. So we really tried to share success stories like that with our staff to get them to communicate even more with families. In the spring, we set a goal with all teachers that every classroom teacher would send a picture and a little note home via Remind every week, showing kids doing fun things in the classroom, learning in the classroom. Really wanted to capture the joys of school as a way to really encourage families to get their kids to school, but also to really connect with families so they felt like they were a part of what's going on. As we focused on attendance at the beginning of the year, we identified a really strong protocol, including data rules for when teachers should reach out via Remind when kids are either chronically absent or chronically tardy. In the winter, I sent personalized letters to families as well as personalized reminds to get them to school if they were offering support to get kids to school. And then in the spring, we actually set some individual goals with families that were chronically absent with some incentive. And I'm really pleased to say that our data is showing that what we're doing, both with communication via the Remind app and also really focusing in on attendance, as you can see from this data, our chronic absenteeism is decreasing and our percent of students arriving at school on time is increasing. So really exciting. And I really can say that setting that goal on communication and having strong communication between school and home and classroom and home has really made a difference overall with families feeling connected to school and on our attendance. But there's always room to grow, right? And so some sites are implementing school to home and classroom to home communication at higher fidelity than others. And I'm excited to say that we're doubling down on that this coming school year. And we're going to double down on that classroom to home communication at Westside and at all elementary schools and all schools in the district. Moving forward, communication site playbook will be moved to day one readiness. So that will be in that day one readiness document, which is great. Like I said, we'll be doubling down on classroom to home communication, both as a cascaded and fixed strategy. We're going to continue to co-develop a communication log for principals so that I have a better handle and principals have a better handle on how teachers are communicating with families. We'll continue to round with Patty in the fall and the spring. We'll also offer professional development around communication to families as part of the welcome back for teachers, which is awesome. And I'm really excited about this one personally. We're going to add to that perception survey the question, I am satisfied with the communication that comes from the classroom. So I'm excited to see what that data looks like, especially for Westside since we've been using that Remind app. Really great things coming with communication. If you have any questions, please always know that you can reach out to me. Thanks so much.
All right. So the next area is, what does success look like? So you asked some questions about what that looks like. How do we know how we're doing? And so a few things that we point to as we think about our work, this work, the communication work. Adam mentioned that we had a consultant do a program audit in January of 2021. And so just anecdotally, the comments that Joe provided to us about our district and are that we're doing some really good work here, and that Sun Prairie is sort of a model for a lot of other school districts and how we communicate. And so that felt good, but that was a nod to once he did the audit, that our work is we're doing a good job with that. So also our communication plan, we look to that. We look at the results. We see where we're succeeding and where we need to pivot or add to it. And so that's something we look towards. We also have the school perception survey that goes out to our students, our families, and our staff, and particularly the questions around communication. So we continue to monitor for those and see how we're doing as a system. We also go back to our operating expectations. We bring them to you once a year, but monitoring for those to see how we're doing, that helps us. Also, Adam and I are WISPRA and NSPRA members. And so thinking about when we go to conferences or when we're in spaces with people who belong to those associations, we sort of have a pulse on how we're doing in comparison to other districts. And so that's been helpful. We've earned awards at the state and national level for the work, our communication work. And so that's a nice nod for us. And then also we've benchmarked ourselves recently nationally. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that process. So how do we know how we're doing when it's a national, looking at it nationally? And so Adam and I worked the last 6 months actually to review using this measurement tool called the Rubrics of Practice and Suggested Measures. It's something that the National School Public Relations Association puts out. And so we got a hold of that, and we self-assessed ourselves over the course of the last 6 months. There's 7 critical areas that we dove into, and it gave us lots of different information under each one of these kind of themes. And we went through and gave ourselves numbers and assessed ourselves. And so just showing you how we ended up in that first pass through was comprehensive professional communications program. We ended up at the high end of established. Internal communications, we were established. Parent and family communications, established. Marketing and branding communications, we were established. Crisis communications, though, we were emerging, not quite established. Bonds and finance information, we were at the high end of established. And diverse, equitable, and inclusive communications, we found ourselves in the established category. So this is a great way for us to benchmark ourselves against high-performing programs, and also lets us evolve and think about how we can continue to move our program to the next level.
And just to clarify what established and emerging means, there are 3 levels for how you can rate how your program's doing. There's emerging, established, and exemplary. So we were in the middle for a lot of those, and we're working to make ourselves exemplary.
Yep. Thanks, Adam. So how do we know how we're doing? There's room to grow. So there were identified areas of the rubric where we were not as strong. So an example is crisis communication. So right away, Adam and I, as soon as we finished that area, we reached out to Anne Marie and her team and said, hey, we feel like we rated ourselves pretty low in this. We should meet and talk about that. So we have a series of meetings. We've met a few times, and we will continue to meet into the summer and think about just reviewing the rubric itself and thinking about all the different ways that we kind of where communication sits, and sort of syncing that up with where Anne Marie's office and the work she's doing, the way we have touch points in several different areas. And we found just from initial meeting that her office is doing a lot of the things. We're just calling them something different. And so over the next couple of months, we will be working to sort of sync up with those things and sort of clean it up, and also gain some understanding around crisis communication should something happen here that we're Adam and I are really situated for making sure communication goes really well. So thinking about moving forward, our goal is to be established in all the categories, and we will continue to work towards being exemplary. So the new communications plan that we will start next year, hopefully you'll see a lot of those things that we want to work towards from this rubric sort of pulled forward into that plan. So with that, we thank you, and we look forward to your questions at the board meeting. Hopefully we're able to answer a lot of your questions through this workshop, but if not, we certainly will be there on Monday to answer your questions. Thanks.